everyone, Sarah here. Welcome to Bringin Back Botany episode 5. Thank you to everyone who keeps watching and thank you for recruiting new members. I'll keep this short and sweet because we've got a lot to cover this week. So with that, let's go find some plants. Alright everyone, we're coming at you with a new plant, and this one is very distinctive compared to the other plants that we've looked at before. And so the flower on this plant looks like a pink and yellow pom-pom. And the plant that we're looking at is sensitive briar, or Mimosa nuttallii, and it's in the Fabaceae family. Typically blooms between April and September in this part of the world, and it is a trailing herbaceous perennial species. And so what makes sensitive briar so unique is these little prickly thorns that are coming off the stem, as you can see there. And that's also what gives it its distinctive name, because it'll catch on your clothing and it kind of hurts whenever you touch it. What makes the inflorescence of mimosa unique is the structures that you're actually viewing. And so you would think that the pink and yellow structures that you're viewing are just modified petals, but they're actually not. And so each of those structures are stamen structures within the flowers. And so the anther is the yellow part, and the filament supporting that anther is the pink coming up out of the flower structures in themselves. And so at the central part of this inflorescence, there's actually a little flower with 5 petals, but the stamen actually exert themselves over the petals to make them more prominent, and that's what you're viewing. And so there's going to be 8 to 10 of these stamen coming out of each of the inflorescences on this cluster. The leaves of sensitive briar are going to be typical of some of the other Fabaceae species that you see around, in that the leaves are going to be alternate on the stem. And so this whole structure that my finger is on is actually one leaf. And within these leaves, they're going to subdivide into smaller branches. And within these smaller branches, there's going to be a series of a bunch of smaller, even smaller leaves. And so that bipinnately compound characteristic is pretty distinguishing within Fabaceae. And also along the branch of this leaf here, there's going to be fine thorns, as you can kind of see by my finger there. Alright everyone, got a new grass species we're looking at. And so the grass in my hand's a fairly common one. It's commonly planted along roadsides and for forage. And so what we're looking at is Lolium perenne, or perennial ryegrass. And so it's a tufted annual or a weak perennial species that can be up to 1 meter tall. And so I zoom out there, you can see, even though that one's curving, it's still pretty tall. What makes perennial ryegrass so easy to identify is the fact that the spike inflorescence can be pretty long, 10 to 20 centimeters, and the spikelets are large and laterally flattened along the spike. Otherwise, I mean that they're oriented edgewise to the rachis of the inflorescence. And so you end up with this kind of semi-curvy rachis. The spikelets of perennial ryegrass occur in florets of 5 to 12. Like I said, they're large and laterally compressed along the rachis of the inflorescence. And what's going to be unique about them is that the first gloom of all the spikelets are going to be absent on all but the terminal spikelet. And so all but the terminal. Likewise, the lemmas on each of the florets may or may not be awned, and there's really no relationship between the length and if they are awned or not. A final note on perennial ryegrass is that the leaves are going to be fairly bright green and somewhat succulent. The leaves are going to be 2 to 10 millimeters wide, and they're a little bit prickly if you rub your fingers along the stems, but I mean, it's not abrasive or anything, it's just noticeably textured. Alrighty everyone, coming at you with a new plant. The plant we're looking at is Texas vervain, or Verbena howlii. It's in the vervain family. Typically blooms between February and December in this part of the world. And it is an upright, kind of slender branched perennial species that can get to about 2.5 feet tall. So let me zoom out so you can actually see how tall this plant is, and you really can't tell from this angle. And so Texas vervain here is really unique in that It has a 4-angled stem, similar to that of the Lamiaceae family, but it's not. And this one has a distinctive central groove in the stem, and so that's one way that you can tell the stems apart between this vervain and Lamiaceae. Texas vervain in itself is going to be a single stalk coming out of the soil, but it'll branch in the upper portions of the plant, like you can see near my hand. And the flower of Texas vervain is really unique. It's going to have 5 petals that are united basally. The petals can be this bluish lavender or lilac color, and sometimes even white. There's going to be numerous blooms at the ends of these branches. The inflorescences are going to flare out widely, as you can kind of see that, and can get up to about 1/4 inch across. The leaves on Texas vervain are pretty variable. They can range from 3/4 inch to 4 inches long and can get up to 1.5 inches wide. They're always going to be opposite on the stalk, but they can vary from being deeply lobed like this one here in my hand to being pretty entire and linear further up the stem as you go.